Okay, for the sake of my privacy, I went ahead and took off all of my patches. That way I couldn't be identified, hopefully. But, I want to read a little bit, try and help my stutter a little bit. It's been getting a lot better ever since I went to therapy, but, tongue twisters and things like that might still get to me, and then just reading in general out loud. So this is gonna help me. We're reading Grimm fairy tales. This is the book I got. Got it at Barnes and Noble. It's fuck, that looks backwards, but whatever. It doesn't tell me who the author's by. Fall River, if that rings a bell or anything. Yeah. I'm just gonna get into reading it. We're gonna be reading The Golden Goose today. That's a fairy tale that I've never heard of. I've seen it in like Shrek or Puss in Boots, I guess, but that's about it. So yeah, I feel like that's a pretty good place to start. There are pictures I'll show too, but it's already been a minute, so let's get into it. The Golden Goose. There was a man who had 3 sons, the youngest of whom was called the Simpleton, and was despised, laughed at, and neglected on every occasion. It happened one day that the eldest son wished to go into the forest to cut wood, and before he went, his mother gave him a delicious pancake and a flask of wine, that he might not suffer from hunger or thirst. When he came into the forest, the old gray man met him, who wished him good day, and said, "Give me a bit of cake out of your pocket, and let me have a drink of your wine. I am so hungry and thirsty." But the prudent youth answered, "Give you my cake and my wine? I haven't got any. Be off with you, and leave the little man standing there." He went off. Then he began to feel a tree, but he had not been at it. But he had not been at it long before he made a wrong stroke, and the hatchet hit him in the arm, so that he was obliged to go home and get it bound up. That was what came of the little gray man. Afterwards, the second son went into the woods, and the mother gave him, as the eldest, a pancake and a flask of wine. The little old gray man met him also, and begged for a little bit of cake and a drink of his wine. But the second son spoke out plainly, saying, "What I give you, I lose myself, so be off with you." And leaving the little man standing there, he went off. The punishment followed. As he was chopping away at the tree, he hit himself in the leg so severely that he had to be carried home. Then said Simpleton, "Father, let me go for once into the forest to cut wood." And the father answered, "Your brothers have hurt themselves by so doing. Give it up, you understand nothing about it." But the simpleton went on begging so long that the father said at last, "Well, be off with you. You will only learn by experience." The mother gave him cake. It was only made with water and baked in the ashes, and with the flask of sour beer. When he came into the forest, the little old gray man met him and greeted him, saying, "Give me a bit of your cake and a drink of your flask. I am so hungry and thirsty." And Simpleton answered, "I have only a flour and water cake and sour beer. But if that is good enough for you, let us sit down together and eat. Let us sit down together and eat. Yonder stands out." And this is just a picture. Okay. Let us sit down and eat. And then they sat down, and as the simpleton took out his flour and water cake, it became a rich pancake, and a sour beer became good wine. Then they ate and drank, and afterwards the little old man said, "As you have such a kind heart and shared what you have so willingly, I will bestow good luck upon you. Yonder stands an old tree. Cut it down, and at its roots you will find something." And thereupon a little man took his departure. The simpleton went there and hewed away at the tree, and when it fell, he saw, sitting there among the roots, a goose with feathers of pure gold. He lifted it out and took it with him to an inn, and he intended to stay the night. The landlord had 3 daughters who, when they saw the goose, were curious to know what wonderful kind of bird it was, and ended up lunging for one of its golden feathers. The eldest thought, I will wait for a good opportunity, and then I will pull out one of its feathers for myself. And so the simpleton was gone out. He seized the goose by its wings, but there her finger and hand had to stay held fast. Soon after came the second sister with the same idea of plucking out one of the golden feathers for herself, but scarcely had she touched her sister than she was obliged to stay held fast. Well, lastly came the third with the same intentions, but the others screamed out, "Stay away, for heaven's sake, stay away." But she did not see why she should stay away, and thought, if they do so, why should I not? Why should not I? That's fucking weird. And went towards them, but when they reached her sister, there she stopped, hanging on with them, and they had to stay all night. And the next morning the simpleton took the goose under his arm and went away unmindful. And the 3 girls that hung on to it, the three had run after him left and right whenever his legs carried him in the midst of the field. They met the parson, who, when he saw the procession, said, "Shame on you girls, running after the young fellow through the fields like this." And forthwith he seized hold of the youngest by the hand to drag her away. But hardly had he touched her when he too was obliged to run after them himself. And not long after the sexton came that way, and seeing the respect parson following at the heel of the 3 girls, he came out. "Ho, your reverence, whither away so quickly? You forgot that we have another christening today." And he seized hold of him by the gown, but no sooner had he touched him than he was obliged to follow on too. As the 5 trampled on, one after another, 2 peasants with their hoes came out from the field, and the parson. There's another picture, but I'm not going to waste time. I'm about to go soon. Cried out and begged them to come and set him and the sexton free. But no sooner had they touched the sexton, they had to follow on too. And now there were 7 following the simpleton and the goose. By and by they came to the town where the king reigned, who had an only daughter who was so serious that no one could make her laugh. Therefore the king had given out that whoever should make her laugh should have her in marriage. The simpleton, when he heard this, went with the goose and his hangers on into the presence of the king's daughter. And as soon as she saw the 7 people following, always one after the other, she bursted out laughing, and seemed as if she could never stop. And the simpleton earned a right to her as his bride, but the king did not like for a son-in-law, and made up all kinds of objections, and said he must first bring a man who could drink up a whole cellar of wine. The simpleton thought that the little gray man could be able to help him, and went into the forest, and there, on the very spot where he felled the tree, he saw a man sitting there with a sad countenance. The simpleton asked him what was the matter, and he answered, "I have a great thirst which I cannot quench. Cold waters does not agree with me. I have indeed drunk up a whole cask of wine, but what good is a drop like that?" Then said the simpleton, "I can help you. Only come with me, and you shall have enough." He took him straight to the king's cellar, and the man sat himself down before the big vats, and drank and drank and drank. and before a day was over he had drunk up the whole cellar. And the simpleton again asked for his bride, but the king was annoyed that the wretched fellow called the simpleton by everybody, should carry off his daughter, and so he made a new condition. He was to produce a man who could eat up a mountain of bread. And Simpleton did not hesitate long, but ran quickly off into the forest, and there was the same place sat a man who had fastened a strap around his body, making a piteous face, and saying, I have eaten a whole baked house full of rolls, but what is the use of that when one is so hungry as I am? My stomach feel my stomach feels quite empty, and I am obliged to strap myself together that I may not die of hunger. The simpleton was quite glad of this, and said, Get up quickly, and come with me, and you shall have enough to eat. He led him straight to the king's courtyard, where all the meal of the kingdom had been collected and baked into a mountain of bread. The man out of the forest settled himself down before it and hastened to eat, and in one day the whole mountain had disappeared. Then the simpleton asked for his bride the third time. The king, however, found one more excuse. He said he must have a ship. I will get it. He said he'll go as well. The simpleton asked for his bride the third time, however, found one more excuse and said he must have a ship that should be able to sail on land or on water. So soon, said he, as you came sailing along with it, and shall have my daughter for your wife. The simpleton went straight to the forest, and there sat a little old gray man, with whom he had shared his cake. And he said, I have eaten for you, and I have drunk for you. I will also give you the ship, and all because you were kind to me at first. And then he gave them the ship that could sail on land and on water, and when the king saw it, he knew that he could no longer withhold his daughter from marriage. Took place immediately, and at the death of the king, the simpleton possessed the kingdom and lived long and happily with his wife. I was expecting a little more Grimm, kind of, by what I heard before. That was a decent story. By the title, I kind of thought it would be different, I guess, but I mean, I'm guessing I expected wrong. I was thinking by the title, A Golden Goose. I mean, I get it. It's kind of old-timey, but for some reason, I was like picturing the goose from Puss in Boots, and like, I don't know, angry little shit. But that was an overall good story. Hopefully y'all were able to follow along, listen. If not, that's cool, you know. Hey. But yeah, I got other things to do. See you around.